you know, I speak about silencing the noise, right? So you can, get the messages from spirit. And one way that I, always kind of have done that is, I always seek out, tasks at work to do on my own. And but it's through that time that it's meditation, as I'm jamming out to my music, as I'm just, processing thoughts, letting them flow through. It's communication, right? And just waiting for, different shifts in mindsets that might lead to different ways and perspectives of looking at things, right? But it's, it's the signs and synchronicities. It's the things that pop up into your existence, while you're thinking about certain things. And, as I was just thinking about, how spirit's been speaking to me, recently. And, the message I got about alignment, I got that through a clock earlier. As I go through and get these rooms set up ready for the season, part of it is getting all the clocks, retuning all the clocks, right? And I went into this one room, right? I went into this one room and I almost walked out and left without setting the clock. And I turned around and went to go set the clock, right? I look at my phone real quick just to check the time. 12 o'clock on the dot. All I had to do was plug the fucking thing in. Plug it in. Simple. Alignment. Being at the right place at the right time. Staying in alignment. Being at the right place at the right time. But as I was literally just thinking about how spirit was speaking to me through clocks, I walk into this next room, the clock, 143. I love you. Message from spirit, from my spirit team, right? And then the next one, 144. Alignment, 144, 144,000. Not a magical number. Well, yes, but not in the sense of people, right? It's a frequency that we can all achieve. It's accessible to all of us if we choose it, right? But 144, and then the next room that I went in right now, it went back to 143. And these are all, as I'm already thinking about, the irony, how, I was thinking about how spirit was speaking to me through clocks. And then I go into this room, and then it's the signs and synchronicities, right? You just have to understand how you get the messages, and don't ignore them, right? Not ignoring the messages. The thoughts that go through my mind. Yesterday as I was cleaning out, so in the wintertime, as we winterize everything, all this stuff in like one of the storage that keeps all the chemicals, we moved that into a room for the winter. And as I was moving it back and forth, when I go into the room where we keep it during season, there's like a little window. And what do I see through that window? What view do I see? It's a view that's very familiar to me. It's a view of a road, like right where I used to park, when I first arrived here, when I was homeless, when I arrived here with maybe like $10 to my name, right? And, that's where I was posted up, in a city where if they caught you sleeping in your vehicle here, they would yoke you up real quick and get you the fuck out of there. But I made it all season somehow evading it, right? Be good or be good at it. But, but it was a very familiar view to me, just not from this angle. Now I'm a higher angle, a higher perspective, a different angle, right? And then as I'm going back and forth, the room that I'm taking everything and moving it, transferring it to, what do I see over here when I look over here? I see another apartment, another hotel that I applied to, the year that I first got here. Didn't get anything. And then the next year I even went back there, right? I went back there and I actually got there at the right time, at the beginning of the season. And I met with this guy that as I'm sitting there thinking about that time, and as I'm sitting there thinking about it, I'm looking in the parking lot and he walks out. It's when a door closes, it's not always a bad thing. Could I have used the job right then and the money? Yeah. But it wasn't the right fit. It would have been a lot of micromanaging, and I knew that. I could feel it. I got the feel. I knew that. But I'm exactly where I need to be. And but this job I'm in right now, the company I'm working for, they didn't even own this place then. When I applied here too. When I first got here, I didn't get the job, right? Then turn around the next year. My roommate got locked up. I was getting evicted, right? And you know, the landlord didn't even know I was staying there, apparently. But the landlord, his dad, comes to find out, owns all these hotels. And I got in working with him. And then the same hotel that I didn't get a job at first, you know, then the next year I walked in and kind of like a high, you know, I had some pull, you know, some say so, you know, because I already proved myself to them, you know, my work, my ethic, you know, my knowledge, you know, just my skills, like what I bring to the table, you know. And then, you know, things won't always make sense. You know, I turned down like a management position here, you know, for maintenance because it's not where I'm going. You know, could I? Yeah, I could easily walk into that, but it would take up too much. It's not where my focus is. My focus on growth for myself, but not only for myself, but you know, helping others too, right? That's my focus. This is the sign, you know, the sign that we're waiting for. You know, a lot of times we sit and we wait for the sign that we're waiting for, where it's, how many more signs do we need? We've gotten enough signs. We've gotten enough signs. What are we waiting for?